Good afternoon, everyone. Chris the Contemplative here for another broadcast. And we're going to continue on this journey beyond the veil, which is a little bit more personal than my previous show, which I put on hiatus. And it delves more into the experience of God and how he affects our psyches. However, we will go into a little bit of philosophy just to make the case, because this stuff is pretty uncharted. And we need to see the need for contemplation as well. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Chris the Contemplative. I am essentially the perfecti or second in command of this prayer channel. And we do a lot of contemplative prayer, which is basically a mystical form of prayer. It's the highest personal form of prayer that one can do, that we usually access through meditating on a holy image. And we meditate usually on the Sacred Heart of Jesus right here. And we've had extremely powerful results in terms of spiritual transformation. And we are Catholics here. We are Orthodox Catholics. We are not part of the New Age or any sort of pseudo-Catholicism. We are the real deal, staying in the fray, remnant Catholics, clawing through the chaos and the mud of what's going on in the church, which isn't too great, and trying to be a light for the Lord, or trying to be sanctuaries for him, to be more specific. We are trying to keep the mystical tradition alive because there's so little knowledge on it. Very few people pick up books. If they did, and they weren't so distracted by the news and other superficial corporate trash, they might learn something. But we try to carry the torch by, one, consistently praying and offering ourselves to God in all that we do. And from time to time, we incorporate the spirituality of a doctor of the church or of a saint of prayer into our own life as best we can. And this is really interesting because when you crack open the contemplative experience and look at it after you experience God, as well as looking at the mystical theology like St. John of the Cross or St. Teresa of Avila or St. Therese Little Flower or Brother Lawrence, you start to see that it is very true that one, God is truly love. You're experiencing him as love beyond all telling, and that you really can't make much progress on your own. So there is a huge disconnect which turns people off from growing in holiness because of religious assumptions. And I've gone on and on about this in my Are You Spiritual series. I'll only touch on it briefly, but basically people give up before they start trying, or they don't go very far because, especially us Catholics, we do not understand that the point of this is to connect with the living God, not to simply attend an institutional church and fill the pews. At the same time, we need the deposit of faith because we need an anchor for our experiences so that we don't get deceived and end up completely useless or worse off, dangerous to other people. So we are not promoting the New Age here or any sort of Gnostic understanding of Jesus or what contemplation is. We believe that we are not experiencing a cosmic energy throughout the universe. Well, we are, but it's more than just a cosmic energy or an abstract state of being. It is a person known as the Holy Trinity, or three persons, actually. And yes, they are everywhere, and yes, they are amazing beyond words, but they are also people. And it's an intimate relationship with another person who helps you. So that's a little introduction to what I'm doing for those that are new and chiming in. I don't want you guys to get lost in the translation if you're a newcomer. And today we are talking about the Batman and Robert Pattinson's new iteration. And I actually was very surprised at how well done this movie was and how it parallels things that I'm going through as I grow in the Lord, as well as with the philosophy that I've been studying about virtue and vice, as well as the psychology that I've been studying. And what I said in the trailer was, is the new movie, The Batman, possibly the greatest accurate philosophical depiction of a realistic growth of a human being towards true heroism and virtue? And I have to say yes. However, it doesn't stop there because, like I said, we have an issue where people give up because they don't know where to start, right? When I was a kid, every child wanted to be some kind of superhero. But when life hits you upside the head with responsibilities and temptations and all kinds of bad values and distractions, you usually lose that vision. And of course, the fundamental flaw with all of these really well done fictional stories is it doesn't give you the how. Even if it gets the why right, why be a hero, why sacrifice, how do you get the juice, the energy to actually one day become a force for good, a real force for good? And that is the hope that is given to us through the Christian walk, especially the Catholic Christian walk. Because in prayer, you're transformed to the likeness of Jesus. You actually get an infusion of grace to do good. And anyone that tries to pull themselves up by their bootstraps usually fails because we were created by God in a fallen world to rely on Him in an adventure with the Holy Spirit and Jesus towards the Father. And that's very important. So don't get me wrong. As I explain what I liked about this movie, just keep in mind that I'm not saying that you should willpower yourself to be a righteous individual who saves lives and souls. That is the fatal flaw with most of what I see in the philosophy side of YouTube, even people I agree with, even religious people I agree with. They don't emphasize prayer and intimacy enough. They instead emphasize the law or just be knowledgeable about doing right or wrong. Since when does educational knowledge stop people from doing right or wrong? Can we really say to ourselves that people don't know right and wrong? Maybe they know a superficial level of right and wrong, and maybe they could learn more and get more inspired. But to say people don't know right and wrong as if they don't have a conscience, that's not the case, okay? What's really missing is the intimate relationship with God. By the way, please like the video. There's a little bit of view suppression. I see that there's no one watching right now. Um, of course, that could be not true, but we've had issues with fake views. So please like the video if you're tuning in, spread it to your friends. This time zone from 1 to 2:30 p.m. It isn't for me. I don't get that many people. Later on, I get more views. I've tried different time zones, so that's okay. But the point being is that we know that there's suppression of views too. So liking the video would definitely help. So that's a little caveat into um, how to become heroic, how to become like a saint before anyone gets that confused. And I'm just promoting becoming a vigilante. So the first discussion I'd like to have is why people are into the idea of Batman. He's one of the most beloved characters throughout generations. Even if there's poor iterations of him in fiction, people love the concept. And the reason why people love the concept is because Batman is an evolved version of the vigilante Western hero or Zorro type of unique individualist hero. He also embodies that American spirit that many Americans like, where you take personal responsibility for the good of others and yourself. Not in the sense of, oh, I just do what everyone tells me is good and I'm taking responsibility of taking care of everyone, but in the sense of challenging things, going into uncomfortable places that people don't like looking at, and possibly getting persecuted for your beliefs. So it strikes a chord with the American spirit. It strikes a chord with the spirit of discipleship. If you're following Jesus, that's what's going to happen. And the overall spirit of seeking truth and doing what's right. it it reflects the cross of integrity and not going along with everyone else. He stands on his own. And this is something that's grinded my gears for forever. But the more I look at things, the more I see that what people think altruism is generally has a little bit of asterisk, and that asterisk usually involves at the end of altruism. It usually involves altruism defined by the institution, the system, by everyone else and what they're doing. Let's go cheer for a BLM march. Let's go do what people say is the right thing to do currently. You really don't have your own sense of self, basically. You're just going along with what you are fed. And the clock is ticking on how effective that is. In fact, I would say at this point, most movements that involve collectivist morality have become corrupted. And I say good riddance because there's just an issue with integrity. When I see people, whether they are in the news media or they're low key celebrities, like lower level celebrities, or just people in general, there's just an issue that insults the dignity of the individual when we act like this. Of course, there's plenty of historical evidence that this often ends up in guillotines and mob mentality and all kinds of awful things, which another problem. But I'm saying on the personal level, we like Batman because he embodies what we know in the collective unconscious, in our subconscious, deep down, even though we may be big hypocrites when we watch these movies, even though we may not even get how it applies to us. We know in a very subtle way that Batman embodies what the character of doing what's right must entail. It must not be rooted in what everyone else thinks. It must be rooted in objective truth as best as you can see it, in charity, in wisdom, and in a personal decision to follow that, regardless of who does or does not like what you're doing. So that is why I think people like the character. However, this movie, the more I think about it, the better it gets. This movie covers themes about the character of Batman, which I think is a perfect amalgamation and a perfect character study into what we experience when we try to go against the grain, when we try to go against ourselves, and when we try to take on sin, vice. It's not a Pollyanna depiction of a hero where he already knows what he's doing. And Batman always has had that. I mean, he's always been a flawed character. There's been other comic books and graphic novels that go into that side of him. But I think this, as far as I know, is the most complete depiction of a flawed hero struggling with inner and outer darkness without getting too graphic or getting too melodramatic or too gloomy. Although it's a gloomy lighting, it doesn't go so into such a preachy area where it's just going out into some sort of depressing place. It's done tactfully, but I think everything that I would want to see from a Batman movie, if it came to the morals and themes of the Batman, are there. So the first moral, besides the being an individual and being authentic and having integrity, the first thing that I really liked in this movie, which applies to what we experience here, is the fact that the Batman in this movie, he is awake. He is awake to the corruption of the world. He is awake to it in a way where he can sense that something is off, but he's not sure the full details of it. And this is a very good depiction of the contemplative experience later on, in your contemplative walk, or maybe in the beginning. I don't know. People have different journeys where you see clearly that there is a lot of spiritual enslavement going on. People are going through the motions, they're stuck, they're corrupt, they're selfish, and it just doesn't seem like anything's going to change. He, within the speech of the movie, but a monologue he does, but also within the city itself, many reviewers are saying that the city itself is a character. He clearly sees the reality of human brokenness and how people just often never get it or take forever to get it. The movie is so good with this. They show a lot of isolation in this movie. The city feels isolated. It's very realistic. It looks like Newark, New Jersey, 40 minutes north from where I live. I'm in New Jersey, and whoever made this movie probably has a decent amount of experience with the average corrupt American city. Now, I won't get into the politics of why American cities are so corrupt and dirty, but you can feel the brokenness and the sin and the blindness of the people and the despair in the city. It just permeates through everything. And it's done in a way that if you live in one of these cities, whether it's New York City, oh my gosh, that city's gone completely bonkers, or one of the smaller cities in the area I live in, you're like, now this is it. Yep, I can drive 30 minutes in any direction, whether it be Philly or East Orange or Newark or New York City, or just honestly looking at some of these, seemingly beautiful neighborhoods where there's no community and everyone's into themselves. This feels like a place that I could legitimately live in, and it's like no one cares. It's dark, spiritually dark. No one cares. There's no charity. People are turning more twisted and evil or depressed by the month, and there's a feeling like nothing will get better. In the trailer, they use the song "Something in the Way" by Nirvana. I'm not a big Nirvana fan, but that song worked pretty well. I never was into the Nirvana. I prefer Alice in Chains when it comes to '90s grunge music, and Creed and a few other bands that are like that. Soundgarden. Nirvana to me was kind of like a poster boy of that music, but definitely not the best to offer during that time. But it worked, okay. And I'm not knocking Nirvana. They are talented in their own way, from what they started. But it's kind of like the Beatles, right? Like the Beatles are very talented. Would I consider them the best rock band of classical rock? No, but I give it respect where it's due. So you just feel the weightedness of the human condition that Batman struggles against. Excellent job, Matt Reeves, the director. You clearly are the man they talked of in these interviews, that you love the comics, you want to make it a faithful adaptation to what Batman is all about. Now, about that brokenness, however, the characters in this movie share wounds. It doesn't overly empathize with the criminal element, but if you listen closely and look at the characters, it empathizes in a Christian way. And this is something that is very important. What I mean by that is there's a saying that hurt people hurt people. And without spoiling anything, you see in the movie that Batman has his wounds, and so does everyone else. And there's a communal sin. There's generational sins, right? Because this city has been so messed up forever. And then you have everyone stuck in their sin, and they're making sin, they're hurting people, and then that person hurt that person, and they want revenge, and it's just getting worse, and it's just snowballing. And Batman, although he isn't the worst, he's not untainted by it. And that's always been a part of his character, but it's emphasized. This is another experience that can happen within contemplation, but also when you see the gifts of your transformation. Spiritual transformation is not this home all the time, and you're just floating in the air, which is what we love to believe. The Holy Spirit contemplatively brings you into the reality, the dark closets of yourself or maybe the culture. He shows you the truth. And somehow this amazing movie shows, without getting too preachy, that everyone's stuck in the sewer. We're all stuck. We're all stuck. We all have addictions. A lot of the addictions are shared because of the cultural effect, because of our formation. And then we have personal traumas. You know, you could be abused, you could be bullied, you could be, horribly maimed. So again, it's such a realistic urban environment. It keeps the Batman feel with the lighting and the music, but it keeps the realism that previous Batman movies have been trying to reproduce. And I think this is the perfect blend. The only other superhero adaptation that I think comes close to this or might surpass it is Netflix's Daredevil. And that's super on the nose. I mean, first of all, the character is a Catholic, practicing Catholic. And second of all, I mean, he doesn't even have the big bucks. So he literally just risks his life without any body armor doing karate and stuff to stop bad guys. So Daredevil, Netflix, I recommend at least season one. I think all the seasons are great. At least season one, season two has excellent themes as well. But this movie is also on that level. And so Batman is a sinner. Batman is wounded, but he picks himself up and he tries to not be the monster in a sense. Okay, so the recent Joker movie, and here's a Wojak of Joker, um, shows the aspect of the killing joke Joker, which is it's basically an iteration of Joker from a graphic novel where the Joker is kind of a sympathetic character. He's so broken, he was broken into being a criminal. He went crazy and he became kind of like this deranged maniac with a strange philosophy who just wants to see the world burn. And so Joker and Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight is, I think, the most mature take on the character yet because he is the foil to Batman. He sees the same brokenness and evil, but he falls into hatred and revenge. And by the way, my apologies with the lighting for my own broadcast, with my dark eyes here. I have tried everything. I may need to find a different room. But this room worked last time, and now the lighting's weird. So again, my apologies. I guess it goes well with what I'm talking about, but it was fine 30 minutes ago. Now it's not. So I hope you can see me okay. I'll keep working at it. But he gives in to the dark. Batman does not. Um, and I think that the Joker is the movie Joker, which came, I think it was 2 years ago it came out, with Joaquin Phoenix, is a reflection of what we see in a smaller way with people that are red-pilled about the world, who are objective enough to see for what it is, but are despairing. And I think this reflects many of us. I mean, I think we all cope. We all try to hide in either in self-indulgence or just depression. So that's the doomer here. He's become a bit of a cultural icon. He started off as a joke in a racing joke video, and now everyone's using him in a serious way. But he reflects the Joker, and the Doomer reflects what I see in many people that may have good intention, but they don't know what to do. They just don't know what to do, and we need to start attacking this issue. We don't want, once we red pill, we don't want to fall into just indifference and despair, because now the knowledge is useless. And so, without spoiling it again, there's also, in certain characters in the movie, that same dynamic with Batman. And the Batman himself kind of teeters on that edge, and he has to do some character growth to truly become heroic and not fall into that same pitfall. Again, this is something that is important in Catholic mysticism. Excuse me. Whoops. Whoa. Whoa. Where am I going here? Okay, so if you want to be like an authentic Catholic contemplative, and you start experiencing God, you start to notice that God is so beyond us in the sense of he has attributes, and he has a state of being which is not either or. Now, I'm not going to get new agey about this. My lighting is getting worse by the second. My goodness. I'm not talking about, well, in a non-dualism, man, you exist and you don't exist at the same time, or maybe right is the same as wrong in certain. I'm not talking about that. What I mean is there's balances between who God is in different facets. For example, justice and mercy, right? God has perfect justice and unfathomable mercy. Plus, to make things more confusing, he prefers to be merciful. Okay, so God, although he will lay down the smacketh, he will prefer to forgive and heal and save the sinner, and as gently as possible, if possible. So he's a person, he has his own preferences. Even crazier, in the Bible, he actually changes his mind, not his will, because his will involves both justice and mercy, right? So he's either going to do some combination of both or one or the other. But you see in the stories of, let's say, Father Abraham and Jonah and Jeremiah praying for people, or any saint praying for him to have mercy on them or others, he says in the Bible, I will repent of my evil. I will repent of doing something, depending on if the people simply repent and say they're sorry and try to turn over a new leaf. He's not asking for that much, really. He just wants people to open the door. Excuse me. And he can actually change his mind. So in the contemplative experience, you'll have times where you'll experience a love that's universal because God does love everyone. You'll grow in the fruits of the Holy Spirit. You'll learn to love people more and put up with people more. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we're pretty screwed up and the fact that there's actual evil in the world, and it just actually intensifies. So you have this fever going on inside of you, and I still experience this, and I probably experience this till the end of my life, where on the one hand you see the great mercy of God, on the other hand you see the great justice of God, and you also see that we are so far from God and so far from what he wants us to be, all at once. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, I guess. I mean, how do you make sense of that? Um, so that's an example of, I wouldn't say from darkness into light. We're not there yet, but seeing light and darkness in new ways and in greater ways than before. Your consciousness awakes to so many different aspects of life, and how does it compare to what God expects? And how does it compare to what we're actually doing, and all things in between? I'm going to move this a little bit here, see what happens. Oh, that just made it darker. I guess I should just give up. Oh, there we go. All right, now it's better. So, in the Batman, although this isn't a religious movie, the movie depicts this issue well. And the hero has to strike a balance and constantly work for that balance. Sometimes I've been tempted to wonder if I'm just justifying something that isn't there. But again, if you take the entirety of Jesus' life, the lives of saints, the lives of prophets, and the doctrines and dogmas of the church, as well as apparitions and everything else involving Catholic mysticism, the heroic balance where you will not have all the answers, where you always have to stay humble and seeking the Lord and seeking truth, and you're always struggling, is the path of Jesus. It's the narrow way. There are no easy answers. If anything is wrong, it's this entitlement we have to easy answers. You know, some people that give up or become atheistic or, kind of whatever, man, it sounds like you're making it up. They seem so entitled, without them knowing it, to easy answers. And they act like the simplest answer is usually the best. They take that phenomena that happens sometimes and they apply it to everything because they have inherent laziness and pride, and or they might be in despair and they might think, oh, we're nihilistic, there's no God, you just got to keep it simple and be practical. I have a friend who's like that, and I get through to him sometimes, but he's still stuck in that mentality, and I don't agree with that. I believe that not only does the reality of life and human condition need wisdom, need this enlightenment from the Holy Spirit, and needs an intimate relationship with God, who is truth and love. Not only is that needed in taking on the darkness, but I think there's a beauty to it. I think there's a maturity to it that we can see shine through these characters like Batman. And this is why people love Batman, is another reason as to why they love Batman so much, because he isn't even connected to his comfort zones. And that's the next moral that the Batman shows, okay? He's not perfect, but he has a decent habit of going against his comfort zones. For us Catholics, it's Lent. He puts aside his well, people say, oh, he put aside his happiness for particular things, but I would say he puts aside possible pleasure and earthly happiness. I would say he would definitely gain spiritual happiness from doing what's right and from living in a deeper way. But okay, technically he puts away happiness for what's right. And he does it in a way that isn't imbalanced, okay? He doesn't become a prude or someone that's vengeful. In fact, and that's another moral of the story. Don't become a vengeful like the Joker. Don't become someone that's an extremist, someone that's completely imbalanced. That moral's there as well. But he doesn't do that. But he doesn't give in to the lazy factor. Okay, he doesn't give in to the right? That's what the mob, the mafia type people represent to me. They, one of the, I think the most acclaimed show is The Sopranos, right? Because the character Tony Soprano in the early 2000s, yeah, he's a mobster. He's a little bit larger than life, but his vices really reflect the vices of a lazy, self-indulgent American man, right? And he's smart and he has his own justifications. Um, the mafia, excuse me, the mafia isn't just a criminal element, but it's like an extreme reflection of American greed and vice and throwing up your hands in the air and saying, "Hey, oh, you only live once, baby. Live it up. Life is short. Try something new every day." It's a funny James Gandolfini advertisement I'm referring to, but we have that in us. We may become an extremist, but I think even more common, much more common, we have this throw your hands up in the air, give up attitude, screw it attitude. Maybe not in a depression sense, but in the sense of running to your addictions, or doing a half baked job in serving others and false optimism and saying it'll all be taken care of. I'm in a modern Western country and God will take care of me. That's there's some quietism going on. Some people and there's all kinds of excuses. He doesn't do that. He is trying to be fully alive. Okay, um, so that's a moral of the story as well. And I would recommend if anyone, I should do a review of this book, but if anyone wants to see more of this balanced look at growing in holiness and a very realistic look at it, uh, I would check out New Seeds of Contemplation by Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton, and there's other writers as well, but Thomas Merton does a great job explaining the aspect of when Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And Thomas Merton says, in Jesus, we are fully alive. That is very important. That is a very important thing that people need to meditate on. To be fully alive is to strike that balance. That's one aspect of it. And it's also the balance that God himself is right in the middle of. I mean, if you're really honest, you look at how Jesus acts in the Bible, how he acts if you have a relationship with him. He's wisdom. He is not going to do the same thing every day. You experience that also in prayer a lot of the time. He's going to work independently for the best possible outcome. If he needs to spank, he will spank. He can be like, the father. If he needs to love you out of a sin or something, he will love you. He can be like the mother, or he can do all of these things. But for the individual, he knows them best and he knows how to act within them best. And when we experience that contemplatively, we become like him and we can start slowly but surely to reflect that charity and that courage to others. And that's something which, again, I don't want to give it away, I'm trying not to, that Batman developing in this movie starts to learn. We need more balanced, heroic people. We don't need extremists anymore. We don't need any more kooky people that are like, I don't know, like, just ready to jump into a cult or something or start one. And we don't need lazy slobs either who are indifferent and trying to drag everyone down into their self indulgent misery. We need someone who is just going to commit and keep humbling themselves and keep going against themselves until the job is done. That is if the job is done. Okay. Here's another moral of the story that it's a darkness that can be turned into light. I'm struggling to try to connect this to the title, but when we struggle with these questions and these issues we have within ourselves and without ourselves, greater light comes from it. That's the theme of this. And a very big dark question is what I'm doing having an impact? That is something that this movie really takes on, surprisingly. Is what I'm doing having an impact, and will it ever have an impact? In the movie, he gets his answer, and of course he's Batman, so of course in every Batman story he has an impact. He's Batman. But one of the answers he gets isn't the one he foresees. And that is another aspect of contemplating God and interacting with God and growing in God for the Catholic mystic. God works in mystery. He can work in different states of consciousness. One state of consciousness is called the cloud of unknowing, where you don't know what God is doing. There's experiences of holy darkness and desolation and confusion. But he can even work, if you let him, into the realities of your life and transcend you past the scary possibility that you may not make an impact or not the one that you desire. And this is very deep, and this goes well with the individual hero thing. Batman learns that he should more or less seek the kingdom of God first and foremost over everything. Basically, what that means is he's going to do what's right regardless of the outcome. Can we say that about our own personal lives? And I think this is one of the greatest rivers we need to cross. And it's vital, especially during these times where things are becoming very inauthentic. There's all this virtue signaling, right? There's this term virtue signaling thrown around, and integrity. What do you like when no one else is looking? Well, there's another kind of integrity where you got to ask yourself, well, what if no one gets me? What if I die and I don't get to do much? Was it still worth it? There is an experience of God that takes you into the arts of interior beauty, if I can put it best, which is where you see that it is truly glorious and beautiful to be like Jesus, even if you're not going to be a St. Patrick, you're not going to be a St. Paul, even if no one around you ever gets it. And there's also a happiness to it, in a sense. That is another theme that the movie explores. The more I think about it, boy, this movie has a lot of themes. That's really important. And I know that I'm not just extrapolating from what I want this to be, because in the movie you'll hear monologues and you'll hear character interaction and events that actually back up that these indeed are themes. Like the director and the writers clearly intentionally put these themes into the movie, which is really cool. And hats off, boys. Good job. Because again, it aligns with what we experience here on this channel and what many saints experience. There's a story of Saint Bruno, and apparently he never in his life got to see the fruits of his work. There's all kinds of stories like that. And of course, sometimes it may not be what you think it is. Maybe you'll have an impact, but it may be the greatest impact is opening new doors of understanding about yourself and your calling. That's something that I experience. Sometimes I wonder, like, what am I, where is the Lord leading me? What is this, where's this prayer heading? I'm not growing in this element or that, and sometimes I'm not growing, let's say, in a particular virtue. I'm like, this thing still kicks my butt, a bad habit, but I grow in humility and patience and faith. So sometimes the Lord wants you to learn something before you learn about the thing that you think is most important. And again, Batman discovers this. He discovers that, the mystery of truth and your calling is not it's a mystery. You're not going to figure it out completely. You got to get over that. Um, whew. Still got 14 minutes. I'm going to try to keep this within an hour. On the issue of mystery, another theme which is in the movie is the issue of the uneducated man. I've talked a lot about the need for classical education in our society and in our schools. And Batman in this movie, I think, has enough brain power and maybe enough formation from Alfred to show what having the power of a classical education, in a sense. So I hope that anyone who watches this movie, especially a young person, maybe maybe Robert Pattinson is one of the people that will help others that are young see that it isn't for geeks and it isn't just something your parents say is cool. In fact, parents don't even know what classical education is anymore. Classical education is cool. It's one of the coolest things ever. But it's not what we've been raised to learn in our schools. That's the issue. If you think school is for nerds, well, that's because it's been created to be for nerds. Classical education goes beyond that, and it's very practical. It can be part of a edgy vigilante heroes system of work. You can be a cool young person wearing eyeliner and long hair and brooding and fighting crime. I mean, it can apply to many people. And classical education involves deduction, objectivity, looking at things, asking good questions, knowing logical fallacies. And in the movie, I think this is the first time we see the best depiction of Batman as a detective. Now, in other iterations, I guess with Christian Bale, he did detective work too. But the thing with Christian Bale's Batman is he has a friend with like all these military connections, and he's a mega billionaire. And so yeah, he does detective work, but he has high tech gadgets that like people really can't get. Whereas this Batman's a little bit more low budget, and in the movie he deduces using his brain. He doesn't rely on the bat computer or his super gadgets and like, I'm just gonna type it in the bat computer and just bam, like there it is. And he doesn't have like his super sonar thing that he had in the Dark Knight. He's much more raw and uncut in terms of thinking. He and Alfred are great thinkers, and they're patient thinkers. We need more of that. We don't need regurgitative education. Oh, I did an all-nighter for my medical exam, and I'm probably never going to use it, and I'm probably going to become a corrupt doctor who pushes pills anyway. We don't need any more of that. We need education that is for truth. Okay, we need some St. Thomas Aquinas. We need some Socrates and Plato. We need some better understandings of feminology. Did I say that right? Feminology, okay? We need mature understandings of psychology, not pop psychology, to help us serve others and to help us improve our lives. The Batman shows this in his detective work. That's not he doesn't take out a textbook. I'm sure he studied textbooks, but he knows how to think on the spot. He knows how to have a logical, coherent progression of thoughts. And my God, do we need that? Even in smart people, they don't know how to do that on their own. They only know how to repeat other things because that's how we're raised. And it's kind of sad. It's very subtle too. So good on the Batman for showing that. And what does this have to do with Catholic mysticism? It has a lot to do with it. The Lord can enhance your brain. It's like a mini miracle, which isn't so mini. It's actually pretty big. He can enhance your thinking and discernment. Not only is he the way, the truth, and the life, but St. Thomas Aquinas says that he is pure act. And this energy that created everything can imbue the mind and the body with energies and graces that can help you become smarter, stronger, healthier. It can do all of that. It can heal wounds. It can do all kinds of things to help you be a better person, to be the person that God created you to be. Now, of course, again, Batman doesn't show any faith in this movie. I'm saying that it's a good representation that is digestible to show many aspects of transformation and how God works. Okay. And he also, I would say that one of the things about intelligence that we need to understand, we were raised to think about the IQ test, right? And that has its flaws because some people aren't good at IQ tests and they're still brilliant, and other people just think differently. They have different passions, they have different ways of thinking, and one of the issues is we again are only given a painted, with one color look at what a smart person is. In the movie, the people Batman goes up against are smart too, and just like in chess, he can't 9-step plan everything ahead. In the comic books he does that, I guess because it's cool and flashy, but he has to think on his toes. He has to work with what he has, and if a situation comes in, he's got to use his martial arts wax on wax off kind of intelligence, his keeping, stay frosty, as they say in the military. He has to adapt to the situation here and now. We need that, especially if times get worse. We can't just sit around and say, well, what does this person think? Oh boy, can we find a good book for that? Nothing against reading, but there's a whole nother level of just being able to be cool, logical, and wise, wisdom within a particular kind of particular situation. Especially, let's say, if it's a moral conundrum where you have to sacrifice something or put away a comfort. I don't really see many textbooks talk about that. So what's that going to do for you? Nothing. Okay. The last theme I'd like to cover is a very deep, I would say, experience of God interacting with the soul. And that is to go into Jungian Shadow. So part of inner healing, from what I'm experiencing, is God knocks on the door of the places we don't want him to go into, the memories, the sinful inclinations, the desires, the places where we've never been loved and we need to be loved. And of course, all of those things, these are just words. It really, in reality, feels like this big cave of darkness where a lot of things are connected anyway. Maybe the sin is connected to you not being loved, or maybe some confusion. But I'm trying to make sense of it with words. This is beyond words, but I'm trying to help you out to see what I mean. But there's two things that happen. The first thing is God separates the wheat and the chaff. You know how I said We need balance. We need wisdom. We don't need to be on one extreme or the other. Growing in holiness is like that. There are things that need to be thrown away. Sin needs to be thrown away. But behind that sin, there are desires for good things that we may not realize. And the Batman shows that in the fact that he has to become scarier than the criminals he fights. He has to become a powerful, dominating man without dominating good people, but rather dominating the bad guys. And even then, he has to show mercy because Batman and all iterations except for that silly Zack Snyder version and any other world examples of him, Batman doesn't kill. Right? He believes in the justice system. He doesn't want to kill anyone. He wants them brought to justice, not vengeance. So that's what I call healthy shadow integration, which God can do for you. And God is needed with this. Some people are throwing around shadow integration, all kinds of pseudo spiritualists and New Agers, and people are loving this because Dr. Peterson opened this big can of worms. And the danger of shadow integration is, of course, what if you're not, what if you become too dark? What if you become prideful or vengeful, or what if you turn completely evil? Right? There's in psychology, and pop psychology has been so superficial for so long, but the subconscious is very powerful, right? Like, the things that get us in trouble, like the libido, right? I mean, if you tap into that in the wrong way, you might become a criminal mastermind or a warlord or something, or some kind of, mafia guy, right? You might turn to those hedonistic mafia guys, dames and booze for nights, and you just you just become a mess, and you could lose your soul. God can shadow integrate because his love and truth can guide you into those parts of where you don't want to go, and he can separate the good from the bad. Also, having the deposit of faith and being orthodox is very important to keep you grounded. So for Catholic mysticism, you don't have this Pollyanna thing where, I'm just a sweetie pie and all I do is look at flowers and daisies. Anyone doing that probably is a faker, okay? They're probably putting on an act. I don't buy people that act all like purdy all the time, like they're just sinless. Whether they be secular or religious, most of the time they're putting on an act, and then later on they have, even if they don't have a common sin, they have like pride or something that's really ugly. Okay, so it's very rare to run into the real deal. I'm not the real deal. Okay, I'm trying to be, but like an actual holy person who actually, even in writings of saints and people like Thomas Merton within religious orders, there's people that put on acts. Even Jesus in the Diary of Saint Faustina, which is a very important spiritual reading, I think it's not like on the level of a doctor of a church, but there's been many locutions to saints where Jesus complains. He's like, yeah, people don't want me to go in there and actually heal and redeem them. They just want to put up an act. They don't really want to be healed. And so I can't do anything with that. They don't, of their own free will, let me into their dark places. So they're just going to keep making the same mistakes and putting on an act because they're afraid of it or something. This is like one of the greatest secrets of the Catholic mystical experience. If you let God in, you will become a force of nature. And so the Batman kind of shows that, right? He has his energy, he has his courage, he has his strength, he has his wisdom, but he doesn't become a psychopath with it. He doesn't become a criminal mastermind. He uses it for right. And that is what God does in the shadow integration. And I think that's pretty much all of the themes that I can think of. We're pretty much out of time. But if there's anything else, does anyone have any questions? I don't see many people listening. I hope the broadcast worked out. Might be a bad time for people. I'm trying different time zones. Let me know if anyone is a long-time listener. Let me know what time zones work, and if you could fill the comments with some tips, then I'll try it out. But if there's any other theme I could think of, I guess it would just be to go back to my original point about individualism. Batman, what I like about Batman, his appeal is that he has a vision. And so I guess my parting question to you is, what is your personal vision? And I don't mean a flat land, sold to you vision that people form you to be. I mean, like, what is your actual personal calling that's unique to you? You could be a mother or a father. That could be part of the calling. You could be a teacher like me. It could be the workplace. It could be something small and normal, but do you have a vision of how to serve and how you can become the best version of yourself through God, become a light to others in the darkness, in the reality of human brokenness? That is, I think, the last parting message, because we have an issue where everyone is turning into a Facebook profile page, right? Like, I like skiing, I like jumping, I like running, I like walking my dog, I work at Office Space Cubicle 6034, I'm this religion, I stand with Ukraine, I like BLM, like, all of these things, I got my booster shot, all of these things are clearly just prepackaged narratives and boxes to make everyone a good little boy for the New World Order. Okay, I'm just going to be real with you. That's what this is about. So screw all that noise. What is your vision? What is your gift? What is your calling? Now, the answer won't come easy, but God can help you see that. I guess that's the last contemplative experience that this movie kind of shows, or at least in the character of Batman and why people love him. Like, for me personally, yeah, I'm a teacher, so I teach history, and I also help run this channel and the group, and I help people get along, and I pray along with everyone. But for me personally, my deepest contemplative vision is to stand up for the glory and beauty of God. And I guess that's where I'll end. Yeah. The glory and beauty of God. I'll have another broadcast about this, but why am I so passionate about this? Well, beauty needs to be discussed intelligently more than God's love, in my opinion, because beauty defines love. Okay. We have lots of great saints who talk about the mercy and love of God. And the problem with that is love, just love, the word love is used to justify things like fake mercy and sin. Love needs to be defined by the beauty and glory of God. Because beauty is harmony, beauty is order. Whether it is order in creation or whether it's internal order and harmony, that is important. And I think that's what I'm talking about here. Okay, do you have a sense of the beauty of things, the beauty of what your calling is, or what right and wrong is, or the lack of beauty you see in other things outside of yourself? Because if we lose the sight of the different attributes of God, especially the glory and beauty and justice of God and the wisdom of God, then everything will become flat and meaningless. I think that's what I've been realizing. I mean, of course, I experience God's love beyond all understanding, but beauty and the art of contemplation and these different philosophical things, I believe, is what my calling is meant to spread. Because, again, these words, uh, need to be defined. We need to define things clearly in order to be effective, like Batman or a saint. Or it's just mush. It's just platitudes. It's just something we can easily say and never really do. Or it's something that's really a delusion that really just keeps people messed up, and it's just like it's just like a drug rush or something, an emotional high. So I hope this broadcast was interesting, and I hope this explains this very crucial experience with God in the soul. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Take care, everyone. God bless. We'll be starting up the rosary soon for our group. And again, if you really didn't get it, or if you need anything clarified, just let me know as well. God bless everyone.